Hello, hello. Welcome to today's episode. Yes, I am live today and I am not going to show my face on camera just yet because sometimes, like when I get a download to speak and to come in here, I'm like, sometimes the time that I do these, I'm in my robe. And so, I don't think that that's what people really want to see me in when I go live. But today I decided to also share my link on my Facebook because right now I'm testing this platform out because it's a new platform. I've switched over from Podbean, and also I'm going to start testing out using this live feature to have these what I call pop-up podcasts, classes, whatever you want to call them, so that you can get the what you need to move forward. Not just information. I'm not just about strategy. I'm not just about talking about something with no results. When you listen to these are designed for you to implement. Now, here is the direction that I am going. So, what you are hearing is how it goes in my paid space. Yes, the Energy First Leadership Studio, exactly the name of this podcast, is exactly what I am building behind the scenes, where, yes, people pay to be there, but I'm not here to sell you on that today. Those of you who listen to my podcast know that you're designed to be in there. And those of you who listen will know whether or not you want to be in there or not, but that's okay. I will continue coming on my podcast because it's amazing. I've built this thing from the ground up. I don't have a production team. I am the team. AI, thank God for AI, right? I don't have staff. I am me. I have built this podcast from scratch for the last 3 years. And I don't regret it. And I intentionally started growing when I found my voice and found my messaging to the world without burning myself out, without trading my peace for chaos, without abandoning myself just to do what mentors or coaches or anyone else is telling me what to do. Because my body remembers. It's evidence. It's a sign. My body remembers what it is like to build out of chaos and confusion. My body remembers what it's like to build out of burnout and pushing and performing and doing things so many different ways. I have reinvented the wheel so many times that it all boils down to the thing that I have found that I absolutely love is speaking. I have loved speaking when I started on stages in 2009. I joined a worship team at my church I was at for 20 years. I was on the worship team from, I think, 2007? No, from 2009 to 2017. That's it, 2017. I was on the worship team for 8 years. I learned a lot. Learned a lot about myself, learned a lot about teamwork. I learned how to breathe from the diaphragm. Yes. A lot of times we do incorrect breathing anyway, so there's a way to learn how to breathe, but breathing specifically to get those specific notes is a skill, I'm telling you. A lot of people who sing or want to sing, we see all the shows, right, where they show the people that we want to become. Why? Because they show where they're at now, but we don't know what it took for people to get to that place. So as I'm sipping my coffee, I've got some notes that I took today. bullet point form. Excuse me. Now, this could very well be turned into a, I don't know, $27 masterclass, $97. But today it's not going to be that. I could very well repurpose this. Well, Tiffany, why do you share this? Because when I listen, I don't really want to buy anything. Because if I never showed you or told you how to get into my space beyond the podcast, right? There's podcast, but then there's a way to grow, right? You get more value when you are in my spaces outside of free. There's something that clicks when you decide you're worth it, when you decide that you're not going to settle for the status quo or less than anymore. You're going to show up. And it's, for example, let's talk about movies. People talk about referring to movies all the time, right? People talk about restaurants. They talk about food. So it's the same thing. So today, and I'm planting seeds. I'm planting seeds for what is and what is to come. So normally when I do my podcast, I don't do notes because let's face it, the way that I'm wired, I love to speak. So today's title is called Done Proving. It's the energy reset leaders actually need. This is where you get to stop operating under pressure, old performance patterns, the body that is screaming hell no, but yet we push ourselves to show up and do it anyway. That could be going after the career that causes us to burn ourselves out, that causes us to abandon ourselves and lead in a manner that's not even us, causes us to show up. Could be going after that college degree that you hate going after, all because your parents told you to go get one, because that's just what we do in the family. Your cousin got, a degree, your grandfather got a degree, your grandfather's grandfather got a degree, your grandfather from 1895 went to college, and it's like, but it runs in the family, and you're like, but I don't want to go to college, and so now you're looked at like the black sheep on steroids, or like an alien. And today you're going to hear like the need for rest. And we're going to talk about the shift into energy first leadership. What does that look like? What does that sound like? What does that feel like? And from the sound of it, I know I sounded like I have a huge, promotion going on at the very beginning, but when we start learning to build our lives the way that we want, there's going to be some pressure to slip back into old patterns, old ways of doing things. When we start moving the needle forward in our lives, whether that's business or career, even with parenting or marriage, you are going to be caught up with people that are going to do their best to tell you, guide you, lead you down a path that you might have a lot of resistance towards. And when that happens, you got to pay attention. So many of us, we get so caught up in the accolades and the pleasing and the performance of it all that we forget. Oh, that feeling in my gut of a big hell no every time I go do the thing that I'm being told to do, where does that come from? I'm just going to ignore it. So I'm just going to keep pushing myself, keep performing, because this is what we do, right? This is what you do, works for you. This is what everyone else is doing, because everyone who wants to be successful is doing the same thing. When I was growing up in foster care, I was taught that I had to follow rules whether I liked it or not. I was faced with a life, my entire life, from before I was one until after I graduated high school, with living my life the way other people were telling me to live it. Foster parents, foster siblings, my peers, my, if you want to call them friends, fine. Other foster, kids, social workers. Oh gosh, social workers, therapists. If I didn't do things the exact way that I was being told, guess what labels were slapped on me? Or even words spoken from foster parents giving me ultimatums. Well, that's just not the plan about college. I remember I had I had applied for a junior college because my friends were going, and I felt, like I was missing out because I was like, you know what? I could go to school. I don't know why I was going to school, but I was going to school. I really just was going. But I hated school. I barely graduated high school, but I graduated. I walked across the stage. I got my high school diploma. I still have my cap and gown somewhere in the garage. I do. It's a it's a reminder that I still did it, but I faced immense pressure to perform. I faced proving myself to be accepted, to be chosen. My worth was slapped on with labels that I wasn't good enough, that I was learning disabled. From foster parents, yes, and social workers. Mistreated because I couldn't figure out math, labeled that I was dumb, incapable, not smart, stupid. Well, foster kids, this, foster kids, that. But yet the statistics and the odds that were placed on me, slapped on me my entire life, put me in a proving pattern that costed me my energy, my peace, my clarity, my focus. And I've had inner chaos and confusion for a really long time, until within the last 6 years, when I started learning about how I'm wired, started learning about how I learn, how I make decisions. I started realizing, oh, well, Tiffany, you're not stupid. You're not dumb. You are quite capable. And then I remind myself, which is the celebration of the receipts that have happened in my life because I've stopped trading my soul and my peace for inner chaos and building stuff that I really just don't want to build, or not wanting to build it a certain way. But I would abandon myself to please the people because I really wasn't given a choice. So now in my adult life, when I've gone to say build a business, I started out in 2011 building a business out of feeling like a fish out of water, being dragged across a desert with cactus, vultures, hungry vultures. And it was the most unpleasant feeling I have ever had. And that is where I realize now, I look back as to how I started. I had no idea how to build a business. I had no clue what I was doing. I treated the leader of who was helping me, mentor, whatever you want to call them, building the business, treated them like a boss because all I had was employee experience. And so, what they don't teach you in business when you're building a business is that you're not an employee. Your leader isn't your boss. Your mentor isn't your boss. They're not your parent. You don't need permission. But if you're someone like myself who thought that permission is required to build things the way that I want to build, then It's it's very interesting that it's very interesting what happens when we start learning that, hey, we don't have to build our lives that way. That's the way we've done things. That's the way we were taught. By the way, I was taught from foster care from an early age that I was not meant to succeed, that my voice was not good enough. I had to force myself to be heard. I had to prove that I was worth being chosen. I performed my way in every foster home because if I didn't please the people, I would have to pack my plastic bags and cardboard boxes to move on to the next place, to start all over again. The masks I put on, but the whole part of that left me in such a proving energy. But somehow I defied every odd and every statistic that was placed on me since birth. By the way, something that I forgot that has happened to me since birth is that I almost died as an infant. I had no idea, and I actually forgot about this because my birth mom told me that there was a specific pediatrician in the area in which I live that saved my life. Because when I was a baby, I used to get really bad ear infections, and I would get really high fevers. Then I would get those seizures. If you have a really high fever, especially babies and kids, they can get what's called a febrile seizure. Well, that can cause damage over time. So, and throughout my childhood, I used to get a ton of ear infections, but then they had to remove my tonsils when I was 7 and my adenoids. So that was an unpleasant experience, okay? I did not like it. However, it saved my life. So as you can see, since birth, there's been we'll call it a hit on my life, right? But I am here to tell you that I'm so proud to tell you that I have defied it all and I've given the middle finger and I've told the pits of hell, the pits of darkness, screw you, right? And the way that I do that is using my voice to build platforms where people come and they listen, but they walk away implementing. They walk away transformed. They stop for leaders in career and business. You stop running on proving energy. You reset your energy before burnout becomes your identity. Boundaries happen. You start setting boundaries as the doorway back to your peace. Why? Because you know that if you don't have boundaries to preserve and protect your peace, you won't have the energy to stay top notch to keep going. Your clarity, power, and presence come back and get stronger with every time you press play, even if it's to the same podcast episode, which is why I'm creating a studio, which is for the leaders that want to keep this going, but where you get celebrated, you get accountability inside the Energy First Leadership Studio. Just like the title of my podcast, I figured I'm just going to keep it going. Why? Because it's what leaders are looking for. Because if you're anyone like me, you've known that you're sitting there wondering, does anybody hear me? When is it my turn? When do I finally have the freaking permission to just step away and to stop giving my all, to stop forcing myself to show up when my body says we want a freaking break already? When our soul and spirit are saying, excuse me, will you listen to us? Will you pay attention? We want to take a step back. We want to just be. We don't want to create out of burnout. We want to speak. We want to live in authority, not theory, not just burning ourselves out, not performing. Do you know what performing does? It causes us to abandon ourselves, to look successful, play the part, look good, to get the accolades. It causes us to settle for the status quo. In this space where you stop performing and you start being, you start becoming, you stop putting on a show, you remove the masks. You do that in my paid spaces, by the way, in my membership. Yes, the Energy First Leadership Studio. I teach more on this inside that membership. So, call it a mastermind membership, whatever the Buxton term is, I don't know. But anyway, excuse me. And so I recently have been in a rebellion against performance, a rebellion against a performance based business in life. Last year, my birth mom died. And I think the year before that, my stepdad died. Now, one of the things that I have done my best to do is to honor my birth mom, even though she is the one who is the reason that I ended up in foster care my entire life. She is the reason my life got turned upside down since before I was one. And by the time I was one, placed into the foster care system, into a system that leaves kids in a chaotic environment where where foster parents can put on a really good freaking show for the rest of the world, but behind the scenes, it's unsafe, fear, abuse, a lot of kinds of abuse, hidden. Church played along. So my experience was that I was unsafe, right? But I learned at a very young age, perform your way, Tiff, because that's going to keep you safe. Now, did it keep me safe? No, but that's the belief that I had, because if I could prove that I was perfect, if I could prove that my worth was good enough so I could be chosen for a loving family, then why not? Why not do that? But I did suffer. So my birth mom passed away last year. Last year, we also got a notice that we had to move out of our place because the owners were selling their home. So last April, April 8th, 2025, my birth mom passed away. In September of 2025, actually from January to June and July, I started feeling very unwell. And I'm like, something's off. Like, why the hell am I getting like ill? Okay. By the time, so we then in September, by September, I was getting more ill every like few months, a couple of months. Every 3 months, we got some sort of detrimental news of some sort, whether it was a health diagnosis, whatever. So the I ended up in the ER because I had um, acute bronchitis and I didn't know. I was tachycardic. I was not breathing well and I felt like garbage and I couldn't figure out why. Now, I don't get the flu, I don't get colds. But my whole life when I've gotten ill, everything seemed to have gone to my chest and I couldn't figure out why. So, when I went to the ER and they even did a CT scan of my lungs to make sure I didn't have an embolism. And the doctor was very thorough. I appreciated it. Now, mind you, I have been going to the ER off and on for the last 3 years because the symptoms first started back in April of 2023. 20, April 22nd, 2023. Yeah. So it just passed the 3 year anniversary, April 25th, I believe. Okay. So that's when my life, I'm like, what the hell is going on? And I thought it was hormones. I thought it was all the stuff. But come to find out in the ER, they found nodules on my thyroid. I was like, what the hell? Where did these come from? Apparently, guess what they're formed from? Stress, chaos, all the things I've been talking about. Now it's not funny, but if you're piecing together the connection, so now you can see that perhaps even in your own life, you're starting to feel some dis-ease and discomfort because you're trading peace for burnout. So then comes September. I think it was before I landed in the ER or shortly after. I remember getting a call on a Thursday. Oh, yes, I was home ill from work. My husband calls me and says, we just got a 90-day notice to move out of our place. And of course, because my head is like still in like sick land, I was like, well, shoot. Um, great, So God always moves behind the scenes, whether we like to acknowledge it or not. So we started the process and we started looking. Now, mind you, the rent has gone up everywhere. Okay, where I live, it's one of the most expensive places to live here in California. But I remember a couple months had gone by, or no. Time had gone by. We had started packing, started getting boxes. And then we ended up moving out and into this new place in November. So we've been here since November. Mind you, throughout this whole time, my body, soul, mind, and spirit have been screaming, can we get a time off already? Can we get time off? So then in September 30th, October 1st, 2025, I started growing my podcast intentionally. I mean, it was intentional. I've grown my podcast to over 1K listeners, followers, downloads, and it's still climbing. So I don't even know what it's at today, but let's just say it's over 1K in 6 months. But it wasn't done out of pressure. It wasn't done out of performance. Why? Because speaking is my go-to. So I've wanted time off, but I felt pressure to show up and perform because when we're taught to do that, that's what we're used to. So we will find places that teach us to do that. We'll just show up regardless of how you feel. Or we get the accolades for showing up when we feel like garbage. So to start closing, I didn't realize my story would go as long as it has. Yesterday was the memorial of my birth mom, done at a place in a town nearby because they used to live here in California before they moved to Arkansas and then Las Vegas. And so people showed up. I was at work, but my spirit wants time off to grieve. My spirit wants time off to just be. I don't want to work. I don't want to put together anything. Plus, with a health diagnosis that I received in October, yes, of a viral infection and mono, Epstein-Barr virus and mono, which Epstein-Barr virus doesn't technically go away, right? So now I have been dealing with this energy, trying to find the best way to build a business the way that I want, in ease and flow without pressure, and I thought my podcast is the best way. So even though I had a chaotic 2025, it was not a fun year. I still realized I had not given myself the time off that I wanted because I felt pressure to show up and perform. But now, it's not about staying motivated. It's not about creating a business that's thriving. I mean, great, that's happening, right? It takes time, don't get me wrong. But I also realized the other day that I no longer have to prove myself or prove my worth to be chosen. I am showing up as though I already am chosen. And guess what that's helping with? Staying out of burnout. When I don't have peace about something, when I don't have the inner peace, when I'm instructed to do something, to build something, I have inner chaos. And when there is no inner peace, that is a sign, that is an indicator that something is off. And I have said yes to abandoning myself just to do something. And if I want to live a life that moves like a ballerina, where my highest version is saying, oh no, we don't move out of chaos and inner chaos. We don't move out of dysfunction or proving or performance anymore. We don't have to prove our worth because people are already choosing you. You don't have to prove who you are just to show that you can do something. In the last 14 years, 15 years of trying to build a business, I say trying because now I have had to let go of the performance and the pressure. And as a leader, one of the top things I keep seeing is the fear of breaking away, the fear of doing things the way that you want to do them, the fear of not having permission, the fear of taking time off. And there comes a point where we got to say enough is enough. And we got to choose us. We got to get really honest and really truthful. We got to face the hard stuff. Face the face the music. Otherwise, we're going to be forced to face the music. That can show up in illness, that can show up in dysfunction in relationships, it can show up in feeling unfulfilled. It can show up in a lot of different ways, but until we face the music, and we get really honest with ourselves and we stop holding ourselves hostage to self-abandonment, hostage to looking good, building your life a certain way based on the expectations that have been slapped on you, till you face the music and get really honest with yourself. How the hell do I want to show up every single day from this moment forward? Do I want to show up burned out, running on empty, running on adrenaline and energy drinks and five cups of espresso, all because my brain is tired and it just needs focus and probably sleep and nutrition and hydration and some sunshine? How about getting back to what I love to do? Oh, how about creating a vision for myself or how I want to live my life, not based on rules and expectations? And so that concludes today's episode. And thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for taking the time to invest into yourself and listening and pressing play. And this is a masterclass all in itself. And I do have something coming that I am building behind the scenes. And it is coming to the scene, I believe, by May 21st. It is a voice activated reset. Yeah. And I don't have that pulled up, but I'm working on it behind the scenes, and you will have that information soon. And it's a powerful way to put into action everything you heard today. Because let's face it, when we let go of performance based metrics, I'm telling you, things change in our lives, but things don't change until we're willing, like I said, to face the music and face it head on and challenge it for what it really is, and to ask yourself, what in my life right now have I traded for a paycheck, for money, for, friendships, for where's the peace? If there's no peace, chances are you're running on chaos. But now it's time to put you back at the top, put you first. And it's time to ditch all that performance stuff and set some boundaries so your peace and energy stay top notch and in flow. And thank you so much again for listening. And this concludes today's episode.